Hello. I'm so excited to be back with you guys today and share this amazing guest that I have, Adrienne. And Adrienne, I would love for you to introduce yourself and share with our guest and our listeners what you are all about and what you are up to in this world.
Hello, my name's Adrienne. I'm a professional astrologer and metaphysician. I specialize in I specialize in helping people return to themselves and accept themselves. I've worked in treatment, drug and alcohol treatment, and eating disorder treatment for many years, which gave me a lot of experience working with people with trauma and also working with people with deep shadows of shame. And so I feel like what I'm doing in this life or what I'm up to is really helping people come back to themselves, to come home to themselves, to accept all parts. I have trained and studied in all sorts of different psychological therapies, but I'm really more interested in myth and archetype, hence the astrology, tarot, numerology. And so I see myself as a practical mystic. And what I do is I weave together the stories of people's lives, both through their astrology chart, but also what I help them do is I help them reweave their own stories by challenging narratives and by integrating shadow parts of themselves that have been exiled and bringing them home so they feel really just so they feel. We can say wholeness and integration, we can say all of these fancy words, but really at the end of the day, what we're afraid of is we're afraid to feel. And we're over involved in healing without actually being able to feel. And so that's what I help people do.
Oh, girl, like there are just everything you just said, there is so much. So I'm like, where do I begin? Because one, I just want to commend you for the fact that you worked in addiction and you said eating disorders,
Hmm.
because I know that is got to be just so energetically charged. I would
Yeah.
imagine the training that you got in that. And the reason I say that and is because I have, like so many of us, I have dealt with addiction in my life through,
Yeah.
my ancestors. My dad's in recovery, my sister's in recovery.
Hmm.
And I say that with so much gratitude, but I also know how much that addiction can take away from people's lives.
Yeah.
And the shame of having to confront, even to this day, my dad, when he talks about the past and
Hmm.
how it affected our relationship, he still gets tears in his eyes because he
Yeah.
has so much shame that he lost us for so many years or we didn't have a relationship. So
Yeah.
when you dealt or worked in this field, were you counseling people? Were you okay?
Hmm. Yeah, counseling and supporting and eating disorders in particular are really hard. Yeah, they're a really hard animal. They're a really hard animal to deal with. And I think in that capacity and addiction as well, both of these are imbalances. And when we think about imbalances in the context of the human being, we have to consider that the human being is also part of the context of the community and the culture and, the collective unconscious at the time. And so these imbalances that show up or manifest in our physical bodies are also manifestations of imbalances that are showing up in the collective as well. I mean, we have a political system that is a reflection of that right now. And so when we talk about this shadow work, and this is what I'm very excited about these days, is really working, really explicitly with the shadow and in a way that is both very poignant and very playful, because I think that there's an oversaturation in how we are wanting to fix ourselves. And it's actually, and this is what happens with the shadow, is that it swings to these extremes. And so, in the one sense, we're trying to heal something, but we're trying to heal it from the perspective that is already the extremist. And as an extremist, we go about fixing with the same mentality that, caused whatever that said ailment is. And so,
Mhm.
backing out of that a little bit and understanding that shadow work is not a mental process. It's not something that we are going to reason or rationalize, but it's rather like it's a system. It's our body's connection to nature, it's our body's connection to others through attachment. And there's a whole systemic process that we're moving through versus just trying to, find the problem and solve it. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I am with you because I don't believe that we need to be fixed. And I think that if I'm being really honest, there was many years in my life where that was the nature of healing for me, is like,
Yeah.
something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I need to fix it. And then I'm sure I didn't really see my clients as, oh, something's wrong with you. You need to be fixed. But I was always like, oh, we got to
Yeah.
figure this out. And I got to find, and I still think sometimes I want to find the missing puzzle piece. But so much has shifted for me when I softened into this thought of there's already wholeness. It's about returning to that
Yeah.
instead of thinking that there's something so bad or wrong with me. And I think it's that kind of mindset that brings on so much shame. And I want to
Mhm.
have you explain what
Mhm.
shadow work is, because
Yeah.
some people might be familiar with it and some people might not have any idea exactly what that means.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's an important thing to define, to put language around, because again, like everything in our modern culture, things get really glamorized and diluted, unfortunately. So I'm going to just draw from Carl Jung, who was responsible for coining the shadow, and say that what shadow work is, or what the shadow is first, through Jung's idea, is that we have this ego, and our ego has an opposite. We know in life that there are polarities. And so with our ego, there's also something called the shadow. And the shadow it's an autonomous force. It's much like our ego. It takes on its own psychic energy, and it's compiled of all the parts of ourself that we're unconscious of. That's why it's called the shadow. It's something that we can't see. A lot of times there are parts that are unconscious. So when people say, I know my shadow, I can see my shadow, no, you can't, or it wouldn't be a shadow. And part of the process of integration is that you're bringing what is in the dark forward into the light.
Mm.
The other parts are what gets repressed in the shadow. And those parts are often, we start at childhood, and they're unmet needs. They are desires, or they are impulses or urges or things that went unnoticed or were punished or shamed. So, and our parents didn't know. So when we're throwing a fit at the table with our brother or something, and, our parents are continuously punishing us and telling us, you don't need to be like that. Stop doing that. Why do you have to? What happens is that starts to crystallize in us, and our identity becomes constellated around behaviors that will earn us or win us attention and love. But then what we do is we take all those other behaviors that are considered bad or wrong, or don't buy us the love and attention that we need, on a survival level. And I think that's what's really important to understand, is that many of these complexes come out of a place of fear and survival. So again, these aren't easy things, which is why when we squeeze the shadow, what comes out and how we feel it is that we feel these negative feelings like shame, like fear, like rage, like eroticism, all of these emotions that don't sit well in our own family systems. Our parents or our peers didn't accept them. And so we shunned them, or we exiled them, so that we could just get along. Because first part of becoming, let's say, mature, is that we have to conform. We conform to what our society, what our peers tell us. And in doing so, we develop an identity that has expectations and also a prescription of what it means to be successful, beautiful, and happy, all of which are not something that we developed ourselves, but were socialized and we were conditioned by. And if, when the task and development of our own individuality comes around, and we start developing our own likes and our own desires, and those are contrary to what other people, namely like our communities, let's say, let's talk about gay. Like, I am interested in women, but I'm part of, this Christian community, and I know that I'm going to get shamed because sexuality is in the providence of religion. You can see how there's all these intersections in which, and this is, I want to just pause and take a moment and say that this is part of what it means to be human. This is
Yeah.
human nature, right? And all of our mythologies, and why I love to work with astrology and the archetypes with us, show us these stories over and over again, just simply by saying that there's good and evil. Here we have the creation of the shadow, but then we have all these other really ancient, beautiful mythologies in which, like, we see over and over again, let's say one in which, the great goddess swallows the sun at the end of the night night and she regurgitates it the next morning. This is again like we are being swallowed up into unconscious, and it is the goal of us to remain conscious. And so the shadow and shadow work, what it is, it's reuniting ourselves with the parts that are cut off, which are usually a little bit more easily accessible, albeit they have the greatest judgment and morality that we have deemed them bad and wrong, but they're accessible. Then we have other ones that are unconscious that we're trying to integrate and recognize as part of ourself in the context of our community and our culture. And so shadow work is really about its integration, but it's about wholeness. It's about bringing in all these parts.
And so when you start to work with people in this capacity, I can't imagine that there isn't one single person that isn't a fit for you, first of all, because everybody, when you were talking, all I could think about is the dinner table and how I have my daughter who is, in her emotion, she's very wild, and I love it. And then sometimes it would be inappropriate when I would say to her, hey, the dinner table, we need to be respectful, we need to have our manners. And so on one hand, I'm teaching her, but I also would think in my head, I'd be like, but don't stamp out her wildness. Because and I always was like, she's a reflection of the parts of me that I was never allowed to be wild, because her emotions are just ferocious in some ways.
So good. Let's work with that. May I work with that as an example?
Yes.
Because it's perfect. Like the complexities in this is beautiful. And shadow, again, we inherit the shadow, the unprocessed or the unmet parts of our parents, in particular the mother, right? Because we have a great mother complex. So I love what you're saying there in terms of, we'll say this as shadow work. So right, first in you, what you recognize, and the shadow, because it is unconscious, it needs to be projected. So the mechanism of projection is what allows us to actually acknowledge the shadow. It also has to be in some way accompanied by a great sense of feeling. And so oftentimes those feelings, they're charged feelings. They're not always negative. Like when we fall in love, that's a great projection of the shadow as well. But to stick with yours, like that feeling first of, oh, here's my daughter. And the first thing there is mine. She's my daughter. She's a reflection of me. And so the bias here, working with the shadow work, is we're also first recognizing you have a bias as her mother. And so you have all this unconscious stuff that you're projecting on your daughter. It just comes with the territory. And much of that unconscious stuff that you have projected, the ones that are going to be highlighted are the parts of you that didn't get full development, that didn't get to grow into the light, that you still feel a little bit of like anxiety around. And so to the extent of your own anxiety with those unexpressed parts, you will experience it in the tension that you feel trying to control her wildness. You understand?
Yes.
Right. And recognizing that. So now here we say, this isn't unconscious anymore. You have an awareness of it. So we're beginning to draw it up from the unconscious. But before we try and drop it into the mind, which is what our Western culture wants to do, is analyze everything and be like, got it, figured it out, it's done. Put it in the little shelf and I'm all good. But then we forget that we haven't metabolized then all the emotion. And that emotion is what actually allows you to access parts that you have not been able to metabolize. And so at first, the trigger might be my daughter. Why doesn't she behave like that? Why doesn't she act like I want her to? And the guilt. Oh, I just did the thing that my parents did to me. I am such a bad mother. How could I possibly do this? And then the remorse. Oh, I need to be a better mother. And then possibly if the interjection comes in and goes, hold on a minute, you're okay feeling this anger toward yourself, but have you actually felt the anger towards your own parents for, right, tamping down your wildness? Have you felt the grief from not being allowed to be the wild, sensual child that you were meant to be, right? And to that extent, I'll go back to your initial question. Am I able to work with anybody? Yes, but I'm picky. And I want to work with people that have, yes, in this time of my life, I'm picky. I want to work with people that have some level of awareness and can begin to interact and engage with the shadow, right? And so saying that you do, then you now are with your own shadow of wildness and what happened to that part of yourself. And if you can be with that simultaneously being with your daughter, then you don't need to fix your daughter so that she has a better life than you did. You work on yourself, because then you loosen the complex that then sees her wild wildness as vicariously a return to your own.
Oh my God. Your words are medicine. I'm just listening, getting so many ahas. And it's true. I was like, my husband actually reflected it to me. He goes, you have the same energy as her, but she's unbridled in it and you tampered it down. And it's so funny that you say the thing about, have I taken the time to grieve my own relationship with my mother? Because my mother and her trauma, she wanted perfect daughters.
Yeah.
And my sister and I should always braid her hair and put like ribbons in her hair and do all these things to make sure that when we went to school, no matter what was happening internally, the turmoil in our lives, we always looked pretty in a certain way. And so anyways, it's just so funny because it's like I'm 52 and I literally just in these last few months had this return to this grief of, oh my gosh, I am wildly emotional and I have never grieved the fact that I wasn't allowed to be that because my mom, and I don't blame her, but she didn't have the capacity to hold it at times because she was dealing with her own stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that shadow, when it's not accepted, like you're saying, because the truth is, Adrienne, my daughter would make me really uncomfortable.
Good.
I would be like, and I would get embarrassed because it was when we were moving to Idaho and we're all blending as a family. And I wanted her to behave a certain way so that my husband felt comfortable and vice versa. And I was like noticing all this and I'm like, okay, Dawn, first of all, you were micromanaging everything, but it was my discomfort, my inability to sit with my feelings and wanting, just like my mother, everything to look perfect on the outside so that I could feel safe. And I recognized it, but I still am, to the word that you use, I'm still metabolizing it. And that was a while ago. That was like a couple of years ago because things have shifted greatly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so powerful because I think, and I'm curious, these shadows, when they're kind of not dealt with or they're running rampant in your life, can wreak some freaking havoc. I look back at 30-year-old me and she was a hot mess express. I needed to do shadow work back then and I had no idea what that was. I was blowing up my life. Like I took my life and I threw a hand grenade in it because I didn't know how to admit that I was unhappy in that marriage that I was in, that I was in the wrong job and career. And so instead of dealing with the shadows and the discomfort and the feelings, I just was like, I'll just destroy it all. That was only a shadow, right?
It is. No, it's beautiful. It's perfect. I love it. You're giving the best examples. Let me I want to just first say, I just want to honor you for your honesty and what you just did right there in that honesty and public honesty too, because one of our greatest fears is the shame publicly, because, in the ancient times, if we were chastised or we had to leave, that meant death. And so that's in our body. To be publicly shamed could mean death. So I just want to honor you, Dawn, first for being so incredibly courageous to be honest in that moment, because as women in particular, as mothers, we are terrified to say that we don't really like being a mom. We don't like our kid. We are so stressed out. We are all the things that, we're not allowed to admit. And so even just acknowledging that, I didn't know how to deal with her. She made me feel uncomfortable. What you just did right there is that the psychic energy that was kept, repressing that shadow and that feeling, you just released it. So when we talk about bringing to the light what is dark, it's not just going, I see it, there it is. No, it's going, ooh, and it made me feel uncomfortable. And now I'm embarrassed. And now, because when we do that, what we're doing is we're letting go of all that psychic energy that has been meant to protect us. Right. And in the protection of our ego, we've overcompensated. And when we overcompensate to the extent that our system is so imbalanced, the only way to bring back balance is to destroy the system. So what you just said right now, our psyche is actually so wise that it understands that if we get too fossilized, then we need to fuck shit up. And that chaos, no, really, and that chaos, because the creation of everything always comes from chaos. And chaos is something, you think about the myth of Tiamat and Marduk, like it, chaos gets taken so that creation is created. And so these self-destructive tendencies that we have, Freud called this the death impulse. If you've read Women Who Run with the Wolves, spoke about it as the predator. There are all these ways that it's been spoken about how we have this impulse to self-destruction. And in that self-destruction, we have to consider what's going on internally for us. Our system is actually trying to destroy itself, right? And so there's something in that experience and that engagement that is a pattern disruptor. Oh, otherwise, it's the other thing where we're just repeating these patterns miserably, right? Showing up in similar situations, just wearing different costumes.
Yes. And the pattern disrupt that is such truth, because that is something that I'm adept at, initiating new beginnings. And at that time, the example I give in my 30s, I was not conscious of. I just knew that word that you used. I loved it. Fossilized. I was stuck and hemmed into something, and without a deeper knowing of how to proceed forward, the only way I knew was to leave what wasn't working behind and go into the mysterious terrain of the future. And it was great. I needed to do that. When I look back, I wish I could have done it in a more diplomatic.
Okay, but let's pause, right? So listen to what you just said. And so much of what I'm doing with shadow work is I'm really listening to people. And one thing that I learned in treatment, especially when you're working with addicts who are, many of them failure to thrive, they have, the greatest rap sheets of all of trauma. So you're not listening, they're not speaking with the kind of eloquence that you might expect from somebody else. But listening to the words, what I've learned is that you're not really listening to what they're saying. You're listening to what they're not saying, right? And you're listening to where there are themes. So I want to just like to bring this to your attention. So it's interesting that even in this moment, as you look back upon yourself, right? And I'm just going to be dramatic, okay? For the
Yeah.
purpose of this, right? As you look back upon yourself, lacking just a tad bit of compassion, if you will, right? I hear that part of you in your narrative that is still judging the fact that you didn't do it. You didn't do it fast enough. You didn't do it diplomatic enough. It wasn't pretty enough, right? So there's still an air of judgment. And what I mean by this is that what we're trying to clear is our biases, but to understand that our biases are built into the conditioning. This is where astrology becomes such a fantastic map, because astrology is composed of all of these, I'm going to say, planetary signatures, of which show us nature and nurture, not the argument nature versus nurture. And so inside of us, now, Dawn, what sign are you?
Sagittarius sun.
Okay. And
Aries,
what moon? Aries rising.
Aries rising and a Sagittarius moon. I have 4 or 5 placements in Sagittarius in
So
the ninth
double
house.
Sagittarius, all fire. Yeah. Okay. And so fire is the force. All of these are forces. Fire is the force that is concerned with moving forward, with creation. And so looking back is not something that they do fairly well. And Sagittarians, the shadow of Sagittarians, because they are in search of the truth, always in search of the truth, but they're in search of the truth with this kind of impatience that doesn't allow the enduring sense of emotion that actually transforms our experience into wisdom. And so their shadow is great, learn the lesson and move on. Let me teach somebody else this. So they don't always develop the depth, but they have the breadth of knowledge that's out there, right? And so when I hear you say, oh, I wish I could have done it sooner or faster, there's the impatience of Sagittarius, right? And there's even the idealism that you even had the capacity to do that because, and this is the most important part, if we can't accept all of us, we can't weave together that shadow, which even means that the stupidest mistakes that we made, which, by the way, sin actually means miss the mark. And so every time we miss the mark, it's just like when the leaves fall from the tree and they die and they fertilize and they mulch and they go into the ground. Every experience that we have is as important as the next. And unless we can value all of it, we won't value ourselves. And
Yes.
then what you said, that acting out means that I go looking for love outside of me and success outside of me. But internally, I feel bereft. I feel scarce. I feel unworthy. I feel unlovable. And yet my addiction tells me I have to go outside of myself.
Your words. I just keep going back to you're so articulate in how you were describing this. And for our listeners, I think this is the work. If
Mhm.
you're wondering what to do in your life, if you're feeling discontentment or disconnected within yourself, it's exactly this example that Adrienne is helping me to see. You know, it's so interesting, Adrienne, everything you said, I agree with wholeheartedly. And I teach that in order you can only serve one master at a time. Either you're looking kind of towards the future and who you want to become, or you're letting go of the you can't or you're in the past and you're kind of stuck. And so I'm always talking about letting go of the past and accepting and alchemizing it.
Mhm.
But to your point,
Mhm.
as human and as
Mhm.
much as you saw me so clearly with the Sagittarius shadow, because
Mhm.
that truth is that I am so great at seeing the big picture and the lesson and
Mhm.
going, oh, that was so great.
Good.
But
Go.
there's a part of me that wants to rush through it. And
Mm.
I feel like in the last probably 3 years of my life, maybe a little bit more, I felt like the divine just took me by the shoulders and was like, sit down and you're
Mm.
going to start to be with everything that's happened to you. And you're not going to be able to move until you deal with us. And
Yes.
it was like I felt like I was sitting in quicksand or like sludge in for the entire
Mhm.
year. There was no
Mhm.
forward momentum. It was all grief. It was all letting go. It was all metabolizing
Good.
everything. And it was extremely powerful, really challenging. But to your point with astrology and having the signs and that shadow, that, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody's chart and
Mhm.
you're looking to support them in their shadow work,
Mhm.
you're using the planets as the archetypes
Yes.
in some
So
sense?
the planets are the archetypes in that they are the innate drives within us. And so, for example, our sun and our moon are the essence of, the vitality and consciousness, and then our subconscious, our body, and our memories. And then all of the planets have these innate drives, like Mercury, the mind, how we think, how we perceive reality, how we process information, Venus, how we relate, what we love, what we value, Mars, how we assert ourselves, what our desires, our drives, and our conquering urges and our rage, really. And so in astrology, what I'm looking at, and each of these planets are in particular signs, like we just said with you, which are particular themes. Those themes offer opportunities for development, but also talents that we have inherently that we're trying to develop. Then there are aspects, the planets make aspects together, and those aspects are complexes. And those complexes, what Jung considered to be complexes, were semi repressed memories that are charged with emotion. And so things in us that we can't quite solve, that we keep going back to, and they keep, like your wildness, right? That wild piece
Mm.
is going to come up over and over again. So in astrology, what I'm looking at are, where are the complexes? Where are there things that are repressed? Is there a propensity toward Pluto or Scorpio in their chart? Because that is the sign, the planet of the shadow. Is there an eighth house accentuation? So all of these things string together this story of that person. But most importantly, in my interaction with them, I have to sit down with them, and I'm telling the story of their life, and they're telling me back. And I'm assessing how conscious they are of themselves of in the context of all their parts, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so listening to that then, and shadow work, I feel like I'm just like the conductor of this crazy orchestra. And
Mm.
so it's okay, let's turn down that a little bit. Okay, but let's listen to how you were saying this, and oh, what's coming up here? And then dreams, like the dream world, because the shadow work is it's in the subconscious, it's in the imaginal realm. I have sessions with people, and the next day, that night, they'll have these amazing dreams that they bring into session the next time. We could spend an entire hour in that dream. And now they just got all the wisdom and everything that they needed out of their dream. I'm just the mirror. So
And you helped you
we're
interpret
Mhm.
it too,
Yes,
which is
yes.
a gift. Yeah.
Helping people interpret, yes, like Socratically. And we all, again, I believe that we're all so capable. We just need the right enzymes. And so I want to come back to something you said a moment ago. You said that the metabolization, it sounded like it was supported by grief. And I feel that grief is such an important enzyme. Like grief, it allows us to feel sad and angry and victimized and love and joy, all the emotions, like human emotions, they're so composed, in the experience of grief. And, having been, going through my own grief process for these years now, too, it's been amazing how much freedom I feel from
Yeah.
having an experience that I can just feel.
Yeah, I felt at times, because to your point, grief does contain so much. It's not just the sadness, it was a little depression, anger, some
Yeah.
rage, all these things. And mine was, and I want you to share in a second what yours was around. Mine was around an identity coming to an end because I had lived in San Diego for 33 years. And when I left, I started a new life and a new identity emerged. And I had to really sit with all the changes and the things that I didn't even know were going to come forth within me. But the grief, the thing I want to share with our listeners is there was a moment where I thought, and I've used this analogy before, that it was going to be like a tidal wave, a tsunami that was going to wash me out, like that I wasn't going to be able to sit in that because I never gave myself permission to ever feel on that level. I would always,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, part of what precipitated that was I gave up drinking alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I never considered myself to be an addict or alcoholic, but it played a role in my life that if I had a tough week, come Friday, it was like, okay, I'm going to have a drink. And I had that's almost like that Sagittarius nature where it's like,
Yeah.
big picture, everything's fine. I'm just going to let it
Yeah.
go. So when I stopped drinking, and there was nowhere to go but to be in this vessel and to
Mm-hmm.
feel all the feelings. And it was that sense of, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? Because I think we, as a human being, we
Yeah.
come to this point in our lives where we have to test the waters of who we are
Yeah.
and understand our capacity.
Yes.
And it's like, I've been doing all this healing work all these years. And it's if I can't sit myself, then what's the point? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, I gave myself that year and it was the best thing ever, but it wasn't always easy. And I actually decided to keep my sober journey going because it helped me not be able to run away from myself, just sit in that. And it's become such a gift. So I'm curious for
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
with your journey, and if you feel comfortable
Mhm.
telling our listeners what was the impetus for your grief?
Yeah. I just want to take a moment and just be proud of you. Be proud of
Thank
you
you.
that you gave yourself what, wasn't given to you. And, those little
Mhm.
tiny things that we do exercise such big muscles. And I think part of shadow work too is not just looking at the pieces that we think are negative, again, reinforcing that we need to fix things, but we also need to see where the parts of the beauty, the parts of us that were so beautiful and joyful and innocent, but also had to go underground because we were busy, because it didn't fit, the parts of us where, I mean, you're all fire. So being able to acknowledge and be proud of yourself, you're supposed to feel that way. And by
Mm.
doing that, and when you radiate that joy of being proud of yourself, you actually give other people permission to do it as well. And so it's your job to do it, right? But if you grew up
Mhm.
under this lens of, oh, I don't mean to brag, or let me just take a second to say, I'm proud of myself, you do yourself a disservice. And then the shadow comes back in with, hey, hey, this isn't about you. Don't be selfish. Don't. Da, da.
That's
So
what I always think.
I imagine. So I just want to take this moment and be like, good for you, Dawn. Good for you. Yeah, feeling into that.
Thank you for saying that because
Yeah.
I am one to always, I don't want to, yeah, I always think, I don't want to brag. I don't want to, but it was, if I had to look back at the toughest life events, like I've gone through a lot in my life. I have a very rich tapestry that I've
Mhm.
woven through the years. I'm very colorful. And that was probably in the top three experiences of
Ah,
my life was that
yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that too, because when we are in those really big experiences, I call them concentrated experiences. And in the
Mm.
concentration of that, they're little petri dishes in which we actually get to reenact, and when we're talking about trauma, and trauma as being something that is also the cause of a big cause for the shadow, a big part of that is that we need to feel a little bit uncomfortable so that it resurrects that haunting, that impression, that echo of that feeling, so we can be with it. Because what I heard you say, which is the perfect question, is, can I really do this? Helplessness and powerlessness are the first feeling of fear. I can't do this. And if we shut down in that approach, we act out sideways and we're defeated, right? But if we ask ourselves, can I do this? Now the curiosity and the question is waiting to see, can I do this? So even
Mm.
in that approach, you're calling yourself forward in a way that is allowing fear to turn into a challenge, much like the hero sets out on a journey going, can I do this? And doesn't know until you encounter and engage in these dragons and these monsters that all along, Dorothy, you were home all along. It was within you all along. Right. But
Yeah.
unless we have the right kind of friction and the right kind of experience, we don't get to relive that. So,
Oh,
to answer
that
your
is,
question, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I just want to say that is so helpful for people to hear because I
Yeah,
think there's such a resistance. And I feel like there's the healing where there's the solving, or somebody feels a sense of resolution because some missing piece is found out and they can kind of move forward.
hmm
And then there's the healing that has you on your knees
hmm
and the experience that I had. And I think both are so wildly important. It's not just like
totally,
the happy kind of, oh, I figured something out and I just feel so much better. It's, and actually this is healing too. There's no just perfect way to go about it. All of
totally.
it is so important. So I just wanted to say that. And I want to, yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that too. It makes me think about, so I do psychedelic work with others as well, as I
Mhm.
think it's a wonderful supplement to shadow work. And it's similar in that way. Like, just because we're doing this doesn't mean that things are going to be solved or resolved. And that's a really big one for me. And my shadow wants to, okay, we're good. It's good. We fixed it. Like, I'm Virgo. That's a big
Oh
piece.
yeah. Yeah.
But life doesn't work that way. So the grief for me, I'll say first, in my experience in my life, I lost my parents when I was young. I've had a lot of death in my life. And
Okay.
most recently, I lost my husband. We were together
Mm.
for 18 years. It was a beautiful, long, most healthy relationship, loving relationship. And in so many ways, the wounded part of my maiden, the part that lost my parents, were drug addicts. I experienced a lot of abuse. I experienced a lot in my life. But through this love, through this relationship, felt so healed and loved,
Mm.
and I became a woman. I became myself.
Wow.
I forged a path in the world. Like, I'm successful. All of this. Yes. And he dies. He's sick first. He had cancer and he had an illness. He dies. And the grief that comes through is not just for him, but it's for all this loss. Not to mention that working with addicts, unfortunately, they die. You get really close to them and they die.
Whew.
And so there's lots and lots of these attachment wounds. And through this experience in these last few years, I myself, like you, gave myself permission to just be, and to let the clouds and the earth hold me, literally to just lay on the ground and stare at the clouds and ask all the questions, to watch the way that the sun falls across the trees, to watch the way
Mm.
that nature engages, because my mental processing needs to figure things out. And I would have been
Yeah.
better in 6 months if my old ego would have been allowed to heal, right? I have the experience. I've been through this before. I'm strong. I can get through it. Blah, blah, blah. No, no.
Mm. Yeah. That's an interesting way that you said that. If you had let your ego do it the way that you'd done before,
Oh, yeah.
but you
Oh,
must have
yeah.
known for your soul's expansion, you had to go about this one a different way. What was that informed you of
Oh,
that truth?
that first, I'll mirror something you said. As somebody that stands up in the community and says, hi, I'm Adrienne and I'm a healer, whatever that
Mhm.
means. I better first do that work because I don't
Yes.
believe that you can take anybody further than you go yourself. And so knowing that I'm always holding that here, I am my own experiment. And so throwing myself to the floor and letting myself really just feel what that experience did is I had to ask for help. I had to receive. I had to not be perfect in the eyes of my clients. I had to not like it brought everything forward in a more advanced way. So now it's like I'm going to grad school. I went to college, but now I'm in grad school going through this experience and I had to. There was not a question of it. And so going through this and now being over here 3 years, the shadow work that comes up, you same as you, like it's an identity death for me. This me that I knew myself as a wife and as a partner, and even very granular things like, being vegan, these ways that I identified that were so held together by that relationship, the relationship not there. Now I have a confrontation with myself like, how much of that is me now? Who is this me? Who am I not in a relationship? And
Wow.
this is a part of exploration that feels very uncomfortable a lot of times, very exciting. I've got a Sagittarius moon, very exciting other times, but mostly what the shadow work that has helped me is I don't need to figure anything out anymore.
Mm.
I don't need to figure out anything. And, being the daughter of an addict, like I had to figure life out from the moment I left the womb. Nobody told me how to do it, where to do it. And if they did, I was like, fuck you, I'll do it on my own.
Wow.
And now that like burden of I got to figure it out, I don't feel that anymore.
So I think for some people that could be wildly liberating to not have to figure it out. And I think for others that use control as a coping mechanism, that could be quite terrifying.
That's me.
So, yeah. What do you channel that into? Is it your North Star? Is it like kind of what you're moving towards? Or, yeah, I'm just curious.
Like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I do that? First is when this is a great question. So, first, I've trained myself to understand when my body is operating from fear. There's a tightness, a restriction that happens. My heart starts beating fast, and my mind starts racing with every single way to solve every problem. And so, I know that right there is stop, drop, and roll, girl. Just stop, drop, and roll.
I
Like,
love that
get
stuff.
down, just stop.
I
You
love
are on
fire.
fire
Yeah.
from the inside right now. You ain't got to figure shit out. Right. So then that feeling will overcome me. And I have learned to just don't make decisions when you're overcome like that. Don't even
No.
think that you like know what color the couch is. So I just let myself be. And this is now the movement of energy. That movement of energy, I first think like it's allowed to be here. There's something called internal family systems, IFS, and they
Yep.
have a great model for working with these different parts. I like how Jung does a lot with the imagination as well. So I've learned to work with these parts inside me. So the first thing is, what do you think you need to figure out? And humor and play they work for me. I've got a Sagittarius moon. They work for me. So
Hmm.
girl, what do you think you need to figure out right now? What do you think you need to figure out? Or have you eaten? What time is it? So back to the basics. Did you go outside? Did you get your sun today? Like the basics, the basics. As long as I know I'm grounded, I'm rooted, I'm well fed, unless I'm in the place to figure things out, I have no business letting my mind, invest in real estate that I'm never going to live in. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I stop, drop, and roll. And then when I feel in that place of, okay, so figuring it out, right? Here's my shadow. You got to feel it through before you figure it out. So you stay with this feeling. What is this feeling? And that feeling is then where I have to do my own inventory, because when I feel afraid, I want to go after it. My fight or flight reflex, I'm a fighter. And so if I want to tackle something right away, I know that's an acting out. I've learned that. So I'm like the same way I
Mm.
am to my cat. Like, it's okay. We're just going to be here. I'm going to stroke myself. And I give myself a little bit of time before I go into something so that I can know I cleaned off my bias as much as I can.
Oh, what
And
a great way to be with yourself.
then the process of being with myself is where I feel like, okay, Now I can figure things out. So notice here, the paradox isn't that I'm not going to figure anything out. I mean, I got a brain and I got to live, but it's what motivates that. Is it
Yeah.
panic or is it faith? And I think grief is something that is such a leveler for us. It shows us what we truly believe in.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And you're right. When your amygdala is hijacked, when our bodies go into fight, flight, freeze, all that kind of stuff, there is no problem solving and getting the best ideas or downloads or anything. I when you were saying that, I was like, yes, because I have the same pattern and dynamic. And I've learned, because my brain always goes into, okay, you got to solve this. What are you going to do? And it's coming from this very frenetic,
Very good.
keyed up place inside of me that it almost is operating, I would say, from like a level of desperation because I'm so uncomfortable. And so
Yes.
I've started to witness, and I'm like, okay, kind of like you, I have that self-talk as well. I'm like, okay, girl, you just need to sit your ass down and just,
Hmm.
I'll go for a walk or do something else
Yeah.
and change that narrative and that energy, because I'm starting to realize in my mature age that nothing is going to get solved from there.
Yeah. Hmm.
And God can't even intervene if I'm in the control room trying to figure out the next thing I'm going to do. So,
Yep.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, you had this huge life altering loss.
Hmm.
And I see you on the other side of it, and you're just radiating. And so you're just so vibrant, and you have so much medicine that's just like literally pouring from every word you say.
Hmm.
So, how is your life now on the other side of this a few years later?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's like, first, the other side. I don't know what the other side is. Like, I often ask that, and what is the other side of this? But I think where my life is now, first, I don't understand time. 3 years feels like I don't understand time. So I
Yeah.
don't necessarily operate under the same conditions of time. So for example, when I was working, I would see 6 clients a day. That's too much. Like
Oh my God.
therapists, you should not be seeing that many people. Like the amount of psychic energy that takes up is a lot. So
Yeah.
now on the other side of this, I can't be with that many people in a day. It's not good for them and it's not good for me. I spend a lot of time outside, literally just I live outside as much as possible because
Mm.
I feel that nature is so incredibly important and loving, and that's all I want to do is just be held. So it's like I have often said, I have this, I don't know, this relationship with pain, I guess, because I've had so much of it. And there's a kinky aspect to it where I'm a masochist in that it does not matter what life does to me. It does not matter what life gives me. Like, I love life. I love this human experience. I love my human body. I love my losses. I love it. It doesn't mean that I feel good with it. I still want to punch somebody a lot of times. But even that part, like, I radiate because I am life. And the shadow, when we repress, what happens is it robs our vitality, our libido. It robs that life energy. And that life energy is always been something that has fueled me, and it's what I have to give to others as well. And so I take care of it and I generate it as much as possible. And much of what I generate it's from those terrible feelings. It's from despair, it's from sadness, it's from anger, it's from those darker places. I know how to generate energy from it because I'm not afraid to feel it, because I'm not. It's just something moving through me.
That is very well said and powerful for anyone listening. When you were talking about, when you were just saying right now, I love life, I love everything, my body, I got tears in my eyes because I don't know if our listeners are going to be able to do this, but I can feel you and I can feel your embodiment. And it brought tears to my eyes because there's not many people that say those words on that
Yeah.
level with that kind of conviction. Need more
Mhm.
people in this world to speak like that and be like, hey,
Mhm.
I love this life. I love everything. And I
Mhm.
am not these challenges. I am in
Mhm.
relationship to all these things, but I am not this horrible thing that's happening or whatever. And I think that's such a incredible way to be with life
Yeah.
instead of life, because it is challenging no matter what.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
It's terrifying.
it's scary sometimes. And it sounds like from the time that you came to this incarnation to have parents that were doing drugs or whatever was going on, like you're already on alert. You're already going to have to be like scanning your environment and all these things. And so you've taken these things that have happened to you over the years and you've allowed them to metabolize and then to love it all. I can feel that from you. So I want to ask you, if somebody were just kind of new to healing, or maybe they've dabbled and worked with a therapist or done some things, but if they're at that crossroads and they need to kind of explore, where would you tell them to start? Would it be with an astrology reading or?
Yeah. I think, I mean, with me, it will always be with an astrology reading because, an astrology chart does what you do in therapy, quicker. But I think if it wasn't with me, therapists are doing this. They're doing it in their own ways. Like, I have an eclectic approach because I have so many, tools, so to speak. But I think that to start, you can do this on your own. And the easiest one that we know of is that, when we feel really triggered and we want to accuse somebody of somebody, you have one finger pointing at the other and three pointing back at yourself. And so to be curious about what is it in that other that might also be a reflection of myself. Shadow work is something, it's personal accountability. We should be doing this all the time. To have supported and guided shadow work, you need to find somebody that is going to, like, I'm very engaging in the session. Something you just did right now, Dawn, too, that when you told me that you could feel me, and that it brought you emotion, that gave me emotion and it made me feel felt. And more important than therapy, more important than all these medicines, we need each other. And so, in that moment, there's something real that happened in our experience. And it reminds me, like when I was trained, that I don't have any emotion. I don't bring myself forward. It's purely for my client. And I don't do that anymore. If we're crying, we cry together. I can't be a blank slate anymore. I'm not that. And there's something more powerful in that. Thank you for saying that back to me and reflecting that, because it means a lot to me. I do feel that way. And so to know that it feels that way for you, right, there's a new constellation inside that I can walk away going like, I feel seen. And we want to feel seen. I feel validated. That feels constellated in me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to say this one last thing too. We're so concerned with alchemizing and transcending all of these things that push us up. We live here on the ground in our bodies. And so we need to be more human in our experience and be less concerned with alchemizing and transcending and more concerned with embodying and being. And that's lower. We get into our body in that way. And so I really encourage your listeners to not be afraid to embody, the fullness, the richness of this experience that we came to inhabit. Myself now, I consider myself an adventure guide. I don't want to be a therapist. I want to be an adventure guide because you came here, we're here for it all. Let's do it.
Yeah, amen to that. And I just want to say, when you speak to your clients and when you work with them, I have a feeling that not only do you bring the loving emotional transmission, but I have a feeling that you bring a level of truth without a fear to say it, which is hard to find because you have to be secure within yourself and you have to love the mission of supporting and guiding and leading and healing others more than you do their liking you or
perfection.
Perfect. Yeah. It takes a really embodied leader to sit across from somebody and say, hey, I really see this. And they may have a look, because I've done it a million times where people have this look on their face with me of how could you, it's almost like not like an attack, but it hits on a part of them.
Totally.
That is so vulnerable that it's, and so I just want to commend you for that because I know to our listeners, I've never gotten to work with Adrienne. I am going to be scheduling a session with you because I wanted to work with you after this podcast. But I know my dear friend Whitney has just raved about you and the truth and the level of care and compassion that you hold.
Mm.
And I know our listeners witnessed that
Yeah,
today. So
thank you.
where do they get to find you? And is there anything
Mhm.
that you're up to currently right now that you want
Yeah.
to share?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. It's shadow work is great, and that's where it's a little different than therapies because the interventions are very direct. And, we cry together, we laugh together, but yes, I will call you out. I will laugh in your face. I will cry. I will all of that.
That's
It's
awesome.
I mean, it's real, right? That's what we
Yeah.
came here for. You can find me on Instagram at, excuse me, at Adrienne Soul Sessions. You can find me on my website, adrienneabeyta.com. I'm taking a little bit of a break with some of the group activities because I'm getting a house renovation, but I do lead group breathworks. Breathwork is another amazing instrument for conjuring up material. So I'm doing breathwork. I will be doing a shadow work group this summer. So that I'm very excited about. I love doing shadow work in a group. It's a really powerful container. The group ends up becoming the shadow and also the container. It's powerful work. I'll be doing that this summer. And then I'm going to teach some tarot cards this summer as well.
Yeah, because I know you didn't even get to mention that, but you love the tarot, it sounds
Oh,
like as well.
yes. All
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Adrienne, I can't thank you enough. I feel
Mm.
like you basically led a master class and the way
Mhm.
that you were able to work with me and provide that kind of reflection for our listeners. I'm so grateful. So thank you for being
You're
here
welcome.
today and sharing all your amazing medicine.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure.